But Kim, how do you find kids are different today than compared to when you were growing up?
Um, that's a good question. And again, I only really work with girls and teenage girls. So that's really my expertise. I
Yeah, that's
can't
all.
I can't speak to anything else. And I still marvel at the lack of confidence, that unwillingness or that uncomfortableness of standing out, wanting to kind of assimilate or recede into the norm. I see that in sport with players being worried if they make a mistake or if they're too good, someone's going to say something about them. I didn't feel that as much when I was younger. I feel like a lot of my teammates were similar to me. And so, growing up, none of us dreamed of scholarships or the Olympic team because it wasn't a reality. Like that didn't exist when we were kids. And so you were playing because of the drive. Now, I look back at my teams I played in mid junior with, and I don't know if we were particularly good. I know we weren't particularly bad, but we didn't win everything. But, I had a coach that Wally would know, Dave McMaster, who was a former national team coach. And we had a great time. And almost every girl I played with went on to play college hockey. Many of them now have kids who are playing hockey and giving back to the game. So there's got to be something in that, right? That experience we had. I would say the players I coached about 10 years ago, a lot of them are starting to give back to the game. And a lot of them are coaching in the organization I'm with now. So I think that like as much as it's changed with the girls, it's just, I'm more aware because I'm trying to empower them, right? And my goal is to empower people drive their own excellence, right? So it's not about me taking you and putting you there. It's about me giving you the information and the inspiration to be able to do it yourself, right? And so, we all know confidence doesn't come in a nice little pretty package, or else I would have made billions of dollars just giving it to teenage girls in a nice little package. But, giving them the resources to be able to do that on their own. And I would say, in the 15 years I've been doing this, the confidence piece is the thing that has not really changed from what I've seen. The top end kids who are quite good, who have, realistic shot at making the provincial or the national team, usually don't show a lack of confidence, or they're very good at hiding it. And then there's a whole group, irrespective of their ability, who just seem to have this hesitancy or this unwillingness to stand out. So I hope for them, I have no problem standing out or speaking my mind or standing up for things. So I hope to be a good role model and example for them. I drive a bright orange car around that's covered in my logo. So I clearly am not trying to assimilate or to the norm. So I hope that I can be maybe a bright light for them, because it is still uncommon. And I would have thought, hoped, wished that maybe that had started to change with the teenage female athlete. But it's still there. It's still there. And to me, it's the biggest impediment to their success on the rink, off the rink, and in life. That lack of belief, that self-doubt in themselves, that is the paralyzing part. Doesn't matter if they have all the skills in the world or all the resources, or their parents take them to every camp. It's that doubt in themselves that creeps in, that really holds them back. So, I don't know exactly how to change it. I have ideas, and I hope, like I said, that by what I've been doing, like some players are starting to see it differently. But unfortunately, I only see them a couple hours a day, a couple days a week, and to undo what they're, is at home, but more importantly in the classroom, right? I mean, Dr. Lui, you've been a teenage girl. I remember being a teenage, and everyone wants to be this big and wearing this and impressing the people and looking a certain way. And how do you fight that when you're trying to be a strong, tough, fast hockey player who's just not going to fit the quote unquote ideal? That's where I see, a lot of girls who at 11 and 12, are kind of seem to be on this path of athletic greatness take this tremendous step back when they hit 13 because they want to start to look and be and act like everyone else. Not to say that's a bad thing if that's what they truly are choosing, but I think sometimes choosing it because it's easier to do.
Well, it's always easier to conform. There's no doubt about it. I mean, it's easier to on the outside to conform. On the inside, you're probably just boiling over. So, yeah, this seems to be a perennial issue with when a little girl heads into puberty. That's when that lack of self-confidence shows up. And I don't know, I guess even as a teenager, being the only Chinese person in the community back in those days, um, I guess I never even thought of myself as standing out because I had some really good friends who accepted me for who I was. But uh, but in high school, we had a really great school counselor who just happened to be Chinese himself. And he encouraged so many of us to go to university. I mean, to pick a profession, go to university, this sort of thing. He was never like a nightmarish school counselor that I heard about in other high schools that told the girls, well, you can be a secretary or a teacher or a nurse, but ours told us you can do anything that you really truly want. So I think I was really fortunate to have some really great adults around me. I had wonderful science teachers, physics teachers, chemistry, biology teachers. I mean, I don't know if it was just luck or just what it was, but it was good to have people, adults around us that every single one of us encouraged us, girl or boy. And we did really well in that particular class of 1974. 1974. Wow. So, yeah, it's still an issue apparently with girls and their self-confidence, but because I've only been around boys with my two sons and mostly boy teams.
I've got a question. Having listened to the podcast yesterday with the hurdler, two questions came to my mind. You discussing what you're doing, Joan, and Kim as well. The first question is the influence of your parents on your ability to do what you want to do and freedom to experiment without fear and to develop an inner confidence and, in some case, a sense of drive to achieve. From my background, there's a first generation Canadian background, and that was with the hurdler coming from Jamaica with her mom and her mom's influence caring for her. And I think allowing her to do what she wanted to do. And so I'm not sure, Kim, to what degree, and you're outside looking in with the parents and their influence relative, the influence of all people around you. What role would parents have relative to a coach to build confidence in their children to feel more empowered and more capable?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think and I've said this on many podcasts I've done, like I don't think I can outweigh the influence of a parent. I can have a great impact on a child's life, and I can be the fun one or the mean one or the tough one or whatever it is, but think back to my own childhood. My parents have worked for themselves. My dad quit a very high up job in aerospace, when I was 16 to become a consultant. So they're self-employed. I never saw them take a sick day. They never whine. They're never lazy. They never, they've supported me with my business, just being there. But I never asked for a handout, was never given one. But I was a latchkey kid, from a very young age. Me and my brothers would come home with the key from school and take care of ourselves until my parents came home. My dad wasn't around during the week because he was in Montreal, and my mom, was working in her business. So there's a lot of independence that comes from that. And when I think independence breeds confidence, I had to figure it out. I couldn't sit there and go, Mommy, can you just do it? They weren't there, right? And I don't mean that, and that is what it is. And I know that's still the reality for kids out there today. So, I think it's valuable to speak of it. I definitely didn't have helicopter parents. I had to sign up with teams because my friends were on them. So, I remember when I played junior here in Toronto, I went and scrimmaged up at Seneca College, Wally, with Angela James, of all people. And she wanted me to play senior with the senior Arrows. This was back when I was still in high school. She's like, oh, you got to come play with us. And I remember saying it to my dad. Now here's Angela James, who's like, I think one of the greatest female hockey players of all time. And I'm on the ice with her and she thinks I can play with her. And God, there's my idol. And my dad's like, well, how are you going to get to practice? Like, none of your friends like play on that team. Well, that was the end of that conversation. It was fine. Turned out okay. But that was my reality, right? So it was not forced independence, but we just had to figure it out. I took my hockey equipment and my stick and got to practice on the subway. That was just it. And so I think a lot of my confidence comes from that, not having it done for me. And now I know I can do it on my own because I've modeled that for myself since I was 7 or 8 years old. And I think if you can do that with your kids at that age and not, spoon feed them everything and handhold through everything. And as I always say to my players, like at some point you got to cut the umbilical cord, guys. Like you got to cut it. You can't, for me, it was cut at an early age. And that, to me, that's the magic of how I got there. Because I can tell you, my parents weren't giving me motivational speeches. There was no internet. I wasn't watching YouTube videos. It came from seeing what they were doing, not being told, just watching. So I was lucky to have those great role models. And I think in the places I coach, a lot of the parents are quite successful in their business lives. I coach in an affluent community. I think those parents, at least from success in their working life can be great role models. I think the challenge is they want to do too much for their kids and clear that path, make it easier for them. And there isn't that figure it out. And how you manage that, I'm just at the beginning of it with a 7, 5, and 3-year-old. So I certainly don't have the formula yet, but I know for me, that's how I ended up the way I am, is because we just did it on our own. And I'm very thankful for that, grateful for that. But I think also in our, in my generation, there was a little less hand holding than there is now. And not quite as little as maybe, for some of you, but for me, there were no cell phones, there was no internet, there was none of that. And I think that's changed a lot of how these kids grow up now.